Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Lauren Culbertson, co-founder and CEO at LoopVOC, and I have here with me today Megan Heure, who is an independent customer strategy consultant and formerly was the head of research and founder of the ABM practice at Sirius Decisions. Thanks so much for chatting with me today, Megan.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, we're gonna have fun. So of course, you have really this deep experience in ABM and marketing operations, and I've really loved our conversations about how applicable those practices are to this really growing economy of being very focused on the customer and something we're calling customer-led growth. So today, I'd love to just dive in with you on some of the major takeaways from your experience and how you've kind of learned lessons that can apply to how we can manage change in what many are calling the customer economy. So we'll dive right in. So when we talk about customer-led growth, you know, we've hit on this before. It's really a extension of product-led growth, right? So product-led growth is all around removing friction from the customer so they can get to value as quickly as possible. But in order to do that, there really needs to be more of a focus on how we define that value that we're trying to drive to them into the first place, and really also being more clear about how all the people that support the operations behind that experience can work together to really drive that value and revenue. I think in that way, there's a lot of similarities to what you've kind of really paved the path for with making a defined field of revenue operations. So I'd love to just start off and talk more about, you know, for teams that are trying to really adopt a more customer-centered approach, what are some lessons learned from really creating the category of revenue operations that could apply here?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think, first, the really interesting thing about the idea of customer-led growth versus product-led growth is that essentially they're two sides of a coin, right? Product-led growth comes from having this incredibly deep understanding of your customer. And it starts with understanding what their needs are, what their challenges are, what their alternatives in the market are, and then creating an experience. And it's so interconnected. The product is the experience in many cases in a product-led growth company, creating an experience that makes it so easy for that customer to solve their problem or get to the value, as you said, that they can't help but use whatever it is that they're being offered. And then over time, that makes it really easy to grow that business because more and more people are attracted to it, more and more people, because it solves their problem so effectively, are happy to replace whatever they've been doing in the past. And the thing about revenue operations that helps create that kind of virtuous cycle of customer and prospect understanding and product and experience value is that with revenue ops, you really got all the components of that revenue engine working together. You've got sales, marketing, and customer success. And when you essentially complete the circuit of those three parts of the business, you aren't limiting your really great operations focus, which means an understanding of planning, an understanding of process, and most importantly, shared data and technology to do something about those things and make it easier. When you bring those together, you're not just limiting it to what happens when people buy. And a lot of times in the past, if you had sales and marketing operations that behaved sort of separately and in silos, there were reasons for that. They need to do different things, and they still do. But when you bring them together with customer operations, and then you have that sort of shared data and technology foundation, it's so much easier to do the right thing and to know what the right thing to do is, and then to sort of build on that over time. And I think that sort of shared view is really important. I think the trick is not kind of whoever the sort of loudest voice in the room is, whether it's sales, marketing, or customer, not letting that function sort of dominate what the team does, just really and truly giving all the components of that circuit, what they need to thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so easy to, try to almost play the hero because we're so used to thinking functionally, right? And so every leader of the function wants to do a great job and really drive the bottom line impacts that will make them the hero. But for things like revenue operations or even, customer feedback, it really has to move away from this ownership mentality, right? And I know you've mentioned that for RevOps to succeed, the battle over who claims ownership of the lead really has to stop. And I think about that a lot too for who owns the feedback, because a lot of times, receiving the right piece of feedback or unveiling insights, data, it can be pretty powerful. And I think human nature is to want to be the one that exposes the insights. But that can also often lead to hoarding data or, not being upfront with everyone to allow them to discover insights and make their own assessments of what the insights mean. So I'm curious, how you think about this notion of moving away from claiming ownership, really applying that to customer feedback. If we're all responsible for the customer experience, does feedback have to be everyone's? How can companies or really individuals start to embrace more of that shared culture?
Yeah. I think it goes back to understanding why you might want to hold on to feedback, right? Or kind of goes back to, why did we want to say marketing has to be able to claim ownership of a lead or sales has to be able to claim ownership of a lead. It's if you are given goals that say, if I don't claim victory on this specific thing, I won't be seen as bringing value to the business, then you're going to get into trouble. And I think with customer feedback, just like with what happens in the buyer's journey, pre and post sale, let's call it, right? Any feedback at any point. All of that is so integrated across the business. And especially in the post sale, you've got so many different sources, whether it's online behavior, whether it's customer support, customer success, whether it's the finance team, anybody who's interacting with that customer, formal surveys, whatever else provides you with information, product usage information. All of those things have to come together if you are going to truly understand the complete experience that you're delivering to all the different customer personas that you engage with. Just like we think about, okay, what are all of our buyer personas? We have customer personas, and all of that information enriches our understanding of what's happening with them. So unless you can bring those sources together, you will never have the full picture. And really then that says that customer insights will naturally come from different places. That's a given, right? You're going to have all those different touch points within your organization, or those points where you're gathering that information. But if you bring them together and then have, some centralized understanding and analysis of them, and then send that back out into the organization, you've got a much richer picture that's going to enable all of the different functions in the revenue team that need to be able to take action on it. The one thing that I would say, though, is while absolutely we have to be comfortable sharing all of that great feedback, at a certain point, there does need to be some independent responsibility of those teams for doing something about it. So I think that's the key. It's kind of, and that kind of goes back to the revenue operations idea. Data is everyone's, but the responsibility to take action on it and the type of action or the requirements that different functions have is going to look different depending on what function it is. So as long as you've got both shared insight, but also specific accountability and responsibility and transparency as to what needs to happen and who needs to take action, and when that needs to be done, it actually takes away sort of that instinct to hoard. And it says, I need to share this, I need to surface these challenges, but I also need to be enabled to take action on them.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. I mean, if we don't have that complete view across the customer journey, it's impossible to make the best decisions. And I think those are some great ideas for how to really break that mold and just move towards a culture of shared data and visibility. And you bring up a really good point too about that doesn't mean that no one has ownership of anything. It just means, the common goal and the collaboration shifts what our individual responsibilities really need to be. So that's great. So I know you focus a lot on really delivering exceptional customer experience in both the pre and post sale, which is great because, just personally talking to a lot of leaders in B2B SaaS, when I talk to heads of customer experience, almost always they come from a post-sale background. So came up through support, which, then they took over customer success, maybe some even professional services. And, now they are over all of it, and they're thinking of that as a customer experience, and almost, thinking of pre-sale as a phase 2, which I find really challenging because expectations are set in the pre-sale. And so if they're not at least thinking about that, it almost seems like they're in this cycle that can't be broken. Like they're just chasing their tail almost. What do you think the biggest barriers are to truly creating experience across the whole entire journey, from the moment you first learn about a problem to understanding how a company can solve it, to actually signing up, experiencing, and then coming back, referring customers? What should we start and stop doing today to get to that holy grail?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This has been, the challenge for companies for as long as, I don't know, I've been doing this, which is longer than I care to admit. I remember a number of years ago, I did a survey at Sirius Decisions where we went out and asked B2B customers about their post-sale experience. And we said, tell us what teams you interact with, so what functions and people you interact with within the selling organization, and tell us what resources you use today. So what do you actually do? And then we ask the question, what do you wish you had in each of those stages post-sale? And there was a pretty big disconnect between what customers said they were using and what they wished they had. And it kind of led me to pull up this really silly picture in front of a large number of people, which probably they were like, wow, why did you put that up there? But it was a picture of a guy who was visiting an aquarium, and he was standing in front of the shark tank, like just smiling and waving, and he's all happy. And behind him is this like massive great white shark with all these big giant teeth. And, if he was actually in the water, that's a really unfortunate ending to that scene. But what I wanted to get across to people is not understanding what's happening after people buy from you is basically the silent killer of your pipeline. And that's because there's 100% transparency, to your point, Lauren, exactly, right? What I promised during the pre-sale, I darn well better deliver after that purchase, because really ugly things start to happen really quickly if companies don't make good on those promises. So therefore, some of the things that really need to change within organizations to make sure you get rid of that giant shark, coming for you of a CX that doesn't live up to your pre-sale promises is, I think, first and foremost, stopping this kind of fear of being blamed for bad customer feedback. I mean, now and again, you're going to have an individual who does something that's a big mistake, and it happens. We all have made them. But what you want to get away from is making people feel like, instead of taking in the feedback and listening and understanding and saying, how do I fix this? They feel like they have to explain it away or justify it and say, well, yeah, but we have to do it that way because we have this system problem, or this other team didn't do what they were supposed to do, or whatever. But feeling like, if I can't explain away what went wrong and why that customer had a bad experience, I'm going to get in trouble. And I think that sort of basic instinct of feeling like customer feedback is there to blame you for something prevents people from taking the right action on it and saying, this customer feedback is telling us something's not working. It's not a person's fault. It's not a team's fault. Together, we have to fix it. So then you say, okay, what do we need to do and what has to change? And you really have to look at that with the fresh eyes of the customer. and say, why did this person feel this way? Why did they have this experience? What went wrong for them? And what can we do to make that not happen again? And reward the change part, not punish the you got a bad report card kind of thing, right? This is saying reward change. In fact, consider even bringing in someone from outside to help with that, because they didn't create it. So they can look very clearly, even if it's just someone from a different team, right? To come in and say, okay, let's really break this down and understand why this happened so that we can fix it and take a fresh view of, well, we've always done it that way. So how could we possibly fix that? You want to get rid of that mindset. So stop the blame, stop the we've always done it that way. And then, really help people take that customer's point of view, hear what they're saying, and say, how do I fix it? I think that's the big cultural hurdle that people can begin to overcome.
Yeah, that is super relevant, I think, too, for frontline employees, especially because,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's like, it starts with them, right? So it's a customer brings up bad feedback or, negative feedback, constructive criticism, really, we should call it. And the frontline, teams want to explain away versus, admitting, taking blame, and then, finding the solution. And so then they hide it from their higher ups and problems are never solved. And I see this a lot too. It's interesting because when you think about the customer experience breaking between sales, let's just say even sales and onboarding, like right next to each other, the handoff.
Yep.
It's like sales, I see that it makes me really angry when companies dismiss feedback that sales is bringing up as if they're like incompetent. And it's like really the only one that looks bad when leaders say that is them, because why would they hire incompetent people to be literally finding customers and bringing them in to set the expectation for their entire customer experience? So there's that, but then that often leaves salespeople to not bring up the challenges. And when they do, they're dismissed as anecdotal. But then when they don't bring up these challenges, customer success or onboarding has to deal with them. And it's like, what sales has to sell around because the company is not making the changes that could actually result in a better customer experience. Sales is having to push the deal through when it might not be the best fit. And then customer success has to be the one picking up the pieces there. And I think they're the ones that it's like the classic, don't want to get a bad report card. So like try to solve it on the front line. But I'm curious, like how your thoughts on the sales side of the house, like, with how to create that system of feedback, listening to the people that, yes, they're trying to close deals, but they're also smart people that are hearing a lot from customers every day.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think sales is possibly the most honest function in any business,
Yeah.
right? Because they have to be. If stuff isn't working, they're going to feel it in their paycheck. A salesperson once said to me, you need to understand that every single person in sales is on a 30-day performance plan. And I think when you really understand that, like no other function in the organization is so tied to making and keeping customer promises as our sellers are in many ways, right? Other people aren't going to not get a paycheck if they can't live up to those customer promises. So or most people aren't. So anyway, that leads them to be very honest, and the best ones are incredibly customer centric because they know that if they're incredibly focused on getting that customer anything they need, that they don't win, they won't exceed. Maybe you make your target if you're not super customer centric and you just like try to get to the number at all costs, including maybe some bad choices about who to sell to, things like that, but you won't consistently exceed it unless you really, really, really put that customer's hat on. And that's what I've seen. The best sellers I've ever worked with will do anything to get what their customers need, and they will explain in unvarnished terms what's happening that's not working.
Yes.
They are their customer's strongest advocate. And I think it's really, not a great thing in a business if they're trying to tell sales, stop complaining. It's like, if I feel like I have to complain and I'm in sales, it's because something's wrong.
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
that, it's a super, super important avenue and an opportunity too, right? To respect that. and to listen to those voices and then say, how do we make this easier? How do we make this better? How do we fix this? But one thing I would want to stay away from, though, kind of the flip side of this, or the dark side, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
is kind of promoting a hero culture,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where people who do the crazy 11th hour, Hail Mary, whatever your favorite cliche is, thing, are the ones that always get the mention at the company meeting or always get the award because they had to do some crazy heroic over the top thing to fix a problem for a customer. Your goal should be a really, really boring but excellent operation, right? You want things to just work. You don't want to have heroes. Now and again, yes, somebody's going to have to do something exceptional. But if you find yourself having to depend on, and often it is a seller who ends up in that role, depend on those folks as heroes, or depend on, your customer onboarding or customer success person to come in and be the hero, it means your operation isn't working, right?
Yes.
You don't want insanity. You want consistency. So listen to your sellers, but with the goal of not, having to have them complain very much, because you fixed it and you made it easy for them to exceed their number.
Yes. I love that. And really hoping that the feedback they give is all the positive things that are working so well, because when you bring up an issue and you see it solved, human nature is to want to say thank you. And I think the best sales reps are also quick to say, hey, this is working. Like we're seeing this change, right?
Absolutely. I love companies that put in place, they make it super easy for people to thank one another,
Yeah.
right? And customers too, right? For customers to have that sort of virtual, high five for the people that have made, their experiences better.
Yeah.
And I think companies who make it easy both to point out things that are not so good, but also to reward and encourage, peers to thank one another, that goes a long way. We all just want that thank you, especially these days, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And especially right now too, where the days are long. Well, great. So last question for you. So obviously, right now, businesses everywhere are really hyper-focused on preventing churn. And you've said that retention is the best growth strategy, which couldn't be more true right now. And one of the ways to address this is to be more connected with account teams. So really making sure there's a lot of listening and understanding and empowering account teams to proactively listen and support customers. What advice do you have for cross-functional leaders on really how to drive this, and what roles do these teams play in really serving as those frontline researchers, and taking the insights they gather to product teams and across the company?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's interesting to me that a lot of companies, a lot of people in companies, I should say, um, don't understand the actual math problem behind why retention is a growth strategy. And if you ask, any CFO, to say, what would a 1% reduction in churn yield in revenue and profitability, it'll be a big number. Just for every percent you gain in retention, you make more money and it is more profitable. And that also then makes it so that you don't have to continuously fill a leaky bucket to grow.
Yeah.
So if you can be assured of a foundation, then your growth number, how much easier is that going to be to hit, right? So it's like the math problem there is really, really important. Um, I think very often the way we reward account teams, makes it easy for them to ignore the reality of that math problem and say, it's more valuable for me to close new business, and reward it at a higher level potentially with their comp plans to go after the new business than it is to make sure that there's a great experience and that my existing customers stay. And so that means that but then the account team part becomes really important, because if you've got, say, a senior account executive who's really, really good at engaging new business and closing deals, that person should not be the same person that is helping to support and deliver on the experience of an existing customer, right? and or even in some cases helping to grow that existing customer, right? You want to have, clear delineation of roles and responsibilities on that account team, and then a clear system of rewards that keeps everybody focused on the things that they can do to reach that retention and growth outcome, right? They become a shared outcome. The AE hits the growth number faster because that person's book of business is pretty sure that they're going to hold on to a good percentage of the companies that they have, because if there's an account manager, a customer success person, customer support, and product, right? The product team that's delivering whatever it is that person bought, or the service team that's delivering whatever that person bought, is making good on the promise that was originally made. So if you've got all those people, plus your friends in marketing, right, to come in and make sure that they are providing the content, the online experience, sort of the ongoing information cycle that marketing is really, really good at doing at scale. If you've got each person on that team doing those things, then you've got really, really efficient delivery of a customer experience that will lead to retention and free everyone up on that team to focus on the thing that they're best at. And I think that's where, if companies can really focus on who should be doing what on the team, and then the system of rewards, so whatever their comp plan is, it ties to that. So if I'm the customer success person, and we all want to get to a renewal number, I'm going to be rewarded for providing support for the behaviors that lead to that positive outcome. And my account team is going to know, because there's this really transparent view into what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and successful tracking of that customer to those metrics, right? And their feedback, that says I'm doing my part on that team. If everyone on that team has metrics that do that, and you can have that great transparency, then that's going to lead to trust. That's going to lead to consistency of experience. That's going to lead to great outcomes for your customers. And it's going to get you easily to those retention improvements. And that makes your growth engine, every part of that engine is really optimized for its own function in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Wow, that is such actionable advice too, that so many companies, I think, regardless of your size, can really benefit from. So that's great.
It
Well,
works. I've done it. We did it at Sirius.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Megan. We'd love to continue this conversation, everybody, for those who are watching. So please feel free to ask Megan any questions you have in the comments, or shoot us an email. I'm at lauren@loopvoc.com. And Megan, do you want to give your email out for anyone who has questions?
Absolutely. But I'd say probably the easiest way to get me is LinkedIn. Just go ahead and find my profile there. Send me a message. I'm always happy to connect.
Awesome. Great. Well, it was great chatting with you, and let's do it again soon.